Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on my YouTube channel as well as the Lilydale sites. And you can also find it wherever you listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, all those great places. It's going out as the Mind Body Spirit.fm network. And this is year 9 of Wednesdays with Willa. So you've got lots of archived videos of past shows. I would refer you to my YouTube channel because that's where they all are located. So if you decide you want to binge watch the show, many people do, that's your favorite location for that. And it is a treasure trove of amazing guests, people that have been mediums, authors, different walks of life. And we typically have a spiritual conversation relating to spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And today we're going to be talking about the psychology of suspense. And we have the perfect person on as the guest today. And I'm happy to welcome back Wendy Corsi Staub. And Wendy, thank you for being here.
Willa and everybody. Hi.
And those of you who don't know who Wendy is, she is an amazing author. She's the best-selling author of the Lilydale Paranormal Mystery Book series. She is also a multiple New York Times best-selling author, a multiple USA Today best-selling author, and she has been nominated 3 times for the Mystery Writers of America Edgar Award in the Mary Higgins Clark category. And she is a featured 2026 Lilydale Summer Workshop Program highlight. And we're glad to have her come back on the show. Last time she was here, we spoke about how she writes the Lilydale mysteries because she has a lot of different series, and one of them focuses on our small town. And even though none of those things happened, none of those things happened.
Okay, none of them actually happened, but the places are real.
The place is real. So she used the location, but please don't walk around expecting death at every corner
Yeah.
because that's just not the reality of a sweet little town that we know
No,
to be Lilydale.
definitely not. I'm sorry, Lilydale. No,
It's
cutest.
not, it's not a spook town. It's not anything like that. It's actually a quaint village, and it is the world's largest center for the religion of spiritualism. And so there's a beautiful focus on the sacred, on understanding of mediumship and healing. And we've got so many wonderful workshops lined up for the 2026 summer season, which starts on June 19th this year and runs until August 30th. And Wendy is, we're going to share a little bit later about her particular event that will be here this summer. And I will have the link to the tickets in the show notes so you can find those. But we're going to get into our topic for today, which is the psychology of suspense. And that is something that Wendy has to specialize in as a mystery writer. So, where should we start first, Wendy?
Well, let's start with Lilydale books, even though I've written all kinds of suspense. Because it's funny. People like to pigeonhole genre, and so those are technically mysteries. Some of my other books are suspense, some are romantic suspense, some are historical romance. There's in the publishing industry, it's very specific within, but in my experience, it's always a mashup. So my Lilydale mysteries, I would say, are they meet suspense halfway. There's a lot of suspense in them, psychological suspense, which is a subcategory too. There's domestic suspense, psychological suspense. Yeah. So so I think that those books, when I was writing them, I was coming right out of writing a psychological suspense series, a different one. And that just sort of fell into my natural voice. Like these books just fell into my natural rhythm of building suspense. And so technically, a mystery novel is a book about something that's already happened and you have to unravel it. Suspense is about something building toward something big that's going to happen and you have to prevent it, not you, the protagonist. So basically, these Lily Dale books are both. I mean, there's a lot of suspense. Even if something has already happened, something else is about to happen, usually. So Bella, my heroine, my protagonist, has to unravel whatever's going on and prevent disaster.
Yeah, disaster's always waiting in the wings, it seems. It's like, so would you say in some ways you almost have to take the pessimist's viewpoint?
Yeah, I have to get into the villain's viewpoint. Usually I
Yeah,
have to understand. So for me, that's where the psychology comes in. I have to understand what makes this bad guy tick, bad guy, bad gal.
sure, sure.
But it's always important to me to find something. I try to find something negative about the hero, or they have to have some kind of a fault, the hero heroine.
Mhm.
And then I try to find some level of common ground with this person that I'm writing about, this, the antagonist. So that is not always easy, and it can be a dark place to go to depending on what you're writing. But my Lilydale books are a little bit lighter and more whimsical, I would say, than some of the darker suspense that I've written. So it's kind of it's I weave in humor, and I mean it's fun. I had an Elvis imitator villain at one point. He was so that was a little bit fun, but he had been bullied when he was a little boy. I create these characters that to me become very real, but I'm like, what makes this guy tick? Like, why is he doing this?
Because
Yeah.
that is something that builds tension within people, that trying to understand why somebody does something, and
Yeah.
the psychology of understanding their nuances. But don't you feel that there is something that happens within a person's brain, the reader's brain, when we read suspense? What do you think's happening in that brain that is craving that?
Well, I can tell you that when I write it, I feel like I'm in control. And I feel like as a reader, you're trying to gain control. Like you're trying to stay one step ahead, right? If I've done my job right, that's what you're trying to do because you're fully engaged. You care about these characters. You don't want anything terrible to happen to them. So you kind of have to understand what makes everybody tick and what they might be likely to do next. And my job as the author, well, it's all about control. I realized that years ago, and when people say, "Oh, you seem like such a nice person. Why do you write this stuff?" And I say, because I was terrified of everything when I grew up. You can't control anything as a child, and if you grow up thinking you have to find some semblance of control, I'm the master of this universe. I control everything that happens. I control what they do. And I think it makes me feel safe. And so in order
Right.
for the reader to feel safe, they have to get to the other side of all of this and feel like they've done their job.
That's right. So there's the storyteller, and there you are trying to tap into what would keep a reader going in your book. And I think that the brain has this anticipation circuitry
Yeah,
in it,
absolutely.
that
Yep.
the different hormones and dopamine and adrenaline, and to some extent sometimes suspense feels good,
Yeah.
and uncertainty can be addictive
Oh
to
God, yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
in certain
And if I
situations.
know, I mean, as a reader or as a viewer, if I know there's a big twist coming in something, like I want that. I want to read that. I want to watch that. I want to see if I can figure it out. Surprise me. I love that.
And I
So
feel that reading suspense is a safe way for people to experience danger,
absolutely.
right?
And you can be in control. You can close the book and
Yep,
walk away if you need to, right?
exactly. Take a break
Yeah. Yeah.
or never
Yeah.
pick it up again if it's been too scary.
It's too dark. I feel like that. I mean, sometimes real life is that way, right? And we're not always able to do that. So again,
So,
control.
are you thinking about the reader's emotional arc that's happening while you're writing this?
I'm trying to make the reader care as much as I do. It's as if you're introducing someone that you really like to somebody else that you really like, and you want them to see all of the appeal in this character. So I start out definitely aware that like I need to show you too. I'm not going to tell you what makes this character tick. So that to me is always really important early on, especially. So I am consciously building that. And then
And
I have this tendency to try to get everything in the beginning. So I start to I have a little it's as technical as I get. I highlight in colored text pieces that I know need to come later, but I think it's important. Like this just occurred to me. This is really important about this character. So I can go back in then and see easily what needs to move to later in the book that I thought of in the beginning. Because you don't want to
mhm.
throw it all in kitchen sink the first chapter, right?
Yeah, you want to parse it out
Yes.
because
But
when
I'm
you're
learning. It's like I'm almost learning who these people are myself. So
right, so you're having to let it unfold petal by petal,
yeah. Yes.
that story like a flower that's
Yeah.
opening gradually. And when you're writing a tense scene, are you consciously trying to trigger a physical reaction in the reader?
Yes, you try to when you're writing something that's tense, and certainly like the final scenes in any novel become very if you look at the pages, there's usually shorter paragraphs, there's faster action. Like you are trying to mimic with the narrative and the dialogue, the sort of fast paced, like hurry, 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 something's happening. So yeah.
Yeah, and so when you're thinking about certain, let's say, tropes, right? Tropes that seem to run true and are part of the suspense world. A lot of those are like missing people, right? Missing
Oh God.
people, that features a lot. Secrets, lies. You got unreliable people that maybe told you something that wasn't true. You've
Yep.
got a stranger in town, like
Yeah, it all worked. And I'll tell you, the real Lilydale lends itself very well to that kind of um setup because you have people coming and going all the time. Like during the
that's
season,
true.
right? People come from
Yeah.
all over the world. And that's how I pitched that to the editor way back when I first said, I really want to set something there. It's it's like the Love Boat in a spookier setting, it's like the guest of the week. Like people change, they come in and they leave,
That's
and everybody's looking for something. Everybody, I think, for the most part, I don't like to generalize like that, but people come because they're seeking healing or they're seeking
yeah.
guidance. They're grieving and they need to feel a connection with someone they've lost. To me, all of those, I mean, that's emotion. That's big, big, big stuff. And it works really well when you're creating characters and suspense. And if anybody's been there in real life, I mean, they get it. I feel it. I've been going there since I was very young. I grew up nearby and, you know, it's it's Lilydale, the village becomes a character in my books for sure. It's a central character.
And Lilydale is kind of like a sweet little sweet grandmother in some ways, right?
It is it's a dark side in my books anyway. But yeah, it's quaint, it's cozy. I love the whimsy of it. I love the cats that are, I'm a cat person. I love that there are cats, there's a fairy trail, there's all kinds of really interesting sort of I wouldn't say necessarily whimsy because it's taken very seriously when it needs to be, but um people who are afraid to go for a reading, who think it's all very frightening, I've had so many where there's like light and humor and the
Yes.
people bring through the essence of the person, and to me that's joy, like that's you know
Yeah,
so but
mediumship done the way spiritualists do it is a sacred joy. And it is a loving connection that happens. And not like in the movies, or no offense, the
no,
books at times.
I try to do it justice in the books
Right,
because I feel like it's been done a lot of injustice and also
yeah,
people are suspicious and
right.
it's something that it's not, so it's been a pleasure for me to do that.
to sometimes turn it on its head. But I do feel that, when you are writing in this mystery and suspense genre, that you're really also tapping into people's universal fears that they have. And
Universal.
that you're not just necessarily trying to work from a formula per se, but there are these universal fears that people have of death, of missing people, of losing their loved ones,
Yeah.
right? And
And
of
never getting to
secrets.
say that last thing you wanted to say, or never getting to just feeling like someone's truly gone. And I think we all somewhere inherently want to feel like that loss isn't permanent and that that person isn't truly just nowhere. And I think that my heroine Bella, my protagonist in the series, has lost her husband, and she's a scientist. She's like I don't believe in all of this until she gets there. I mean, she's that's where the science meets the um oh I'm
The spiritual.
I guess, yeah, the science meets the spiritual in a way that's, I think, really believable. And, I love that she's the one who's like, well, I just don't believe in this. And then everywhere she turns, she is very in tune, because if you're in tune with things and you believe that we are energy, then, you know, that plays right into science, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So when you're wanting to work through some of these things, you're having the tension of Bella and her coming to understanding that what she is experiencing is true. I mean, that's something that a lot of people come and go through. And so the reader's probably rooting for Bella to, hey, of course that was real. Of course acknowledge that that is true. And I think that's that your books help people to understand that they're rooting for the sacred. They're rooting for the spiritual understanding in an
Yeah.
individual, even in a suspense, even in a mystery. That
They've become Bella and they're relating to Bella on that level. And I don't know if I've ever met anyone who just didn't lose and feel like that wistful, just didn't grieve and feel that if only, that's just it's in all of us on some level. So
absolutely.
that's what I wanted to capture, not in a woo-woo way, not in a, because these are at the heart. I mean, they're mysteries. They're supposed to be more or less realistic. And I wouldn't say that this is a spin-off of my young adult series that I did. I did this years ago. The characters are adults in this, some of them. Bella wasn't in that, and there's a whole new cast of characters, but some of them have grown up, and it's interesting to me to see the way they've evolved. And my heroine from my young adult book is now a medium, and she lives there, and her grandma's still there. She's one of my favorite characters. It's the mysterious place where old people don't ever get older, I guess, but the young people do. Because her grandma Odelia is kind of the same as she was way back when. I love it. I love my character. She's my favorite character, I think, in the whole thing.
So is
So,
she probably your favorite to write as well?
well, actually, Odelia, and then there's this little boy, Jiffy. He is precocious. He's also an extremely gifted medium, and he takes everything in this very matter-of-fact way. And I just love writing this kid. He's very funny. He's very confident. He's the kid who's falling out of trees and knocking his teeth out. But I love writing that character too. So Jiffy and Odelia, they're a little bit wacky, but they're really gifted mediums. And when they turn that on, I wouldn't say turn it on, but when they tap into that, there's a depth of character that I just love to explore for both of them.
Yeah, I think that's another element of your particular books. And I wanted to ask you more about this emotional tension and plot tension that you try to have in there. So you have the emotional tension of, let's say, for Bella's uh, situation, she's a grieving widow.
He's a
As,
grieving.
so that's an emotional tension. But let's talk about the plot tension that you try to bring, because that's usually
Yeah. Yeah, I try to. So I usually, in every Lilydale book I've done, and in most of my other books too, I will go into different characters' viewpoints. I have the central viewpoint. In this, it's Bella, but
Mhm.
I've chosen, I usually go into the villain or the antagonist viewpoint, without you knowing sometimes who they are.
Mhm.
But I also will choose another character because I want to sort of give the reader, looking at Bella from the outside, looking at the scene from another character's viewpoint. So that to me is really interesting because it really allows me to dig deep into who these people are and into why they're doing what they're doing. And emotion drives the plot and the plot drives the emotion. I mean, those are intrinsic if you've done it well and if you've done it right,
Mhm.
in any book. So you can't extract one. Like now I'm writing the emotional part. Now I'm writing, this needs to happen. This What I will say is that usually when I go into a chapter, I know what needs to happen and I know where I need to be and get. And then
Mhm.
I sort of plug those characters in and let them act and react to what I'm trying to achieve. Does that
How
make
do
sense?
you?
I don't know if that
It
makes.
does make sense. Are you then also planning how you're going to layer in the clues and the red
Yeah.
herrings?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, that's where my handy dandy highlighter comes in. I yesterday was writing a scene in a different book about it's just something that struck me. It's set in a town called Mulberry Bay and mulberries make red stains and I just envisioned this sort of red stain on a porch railing that's white and how it looks like blood. And later, so I highlighted that because I thought that's foreshadowing. That's, something I want to come back to later. And it was just a subtle little moment, but I thought, oh, it's not blood. But for a moment you think it's blood, but maybe there will be blood, you know.
Mm-hmm. To get people kind of into that space.
Yeah.
So, how about you talk about the art of the cliffhanger?
Yeah, I try really hard to leave every chapter on a provocative point where something's going to happen and then I like to switch away to another viewpoint or it's a little bit later, something where you just need to keep reading and you need to keep going. You never want to wrap up a chapter on and then everything was fine and it's all come to a close, the day is over, and nothing to see here, folks. Like, you don't want that sort of closure at the end of a chapter. So it's cliffhanger, cliffhanger, cliffhanger.
Yes, you
Compare.
writers, you keep doing this to me, and it's horrible. I'm trying to go to sleep, and I have to read one more chapter, one more chapter, one more.
Yeah, it's fun. And for me, when I'm writing it, I like to leave off on a provocative point too, so that when I come back the next day, it's not this feeling of I resolved that. I need to get right back into it and see what happens next, or make what happens next happen. If I am writing and I'm bored, then chances are the reader's bored and I'm not, I better rewrite it.
So on the flip side of the boredom is knowing when to pace, right? When to tighten, but then also when to let the reader breathe.
Yes, and I like in my Lilydale books because they're such interesting characters to me and they're so real to me. I mean, I've written so many of these now. I know them so well. I like their banter. I like to have
Uh-huh.
these, like, in the middle of a tense scene, I'll sort of have, this crazy conversation happen about you know, a in the latest one, it's Toil and Trouble is the last one I wrote, came out in the fall. Odelia had this vision of something. She keeps dreaming something and she thinks it's about the Titanic and there's a sailor that won't leave her alone. So in the middle of what's going on with Bella and sort of, this knife that she finds at Valley View, the fictional inn that she runs, I have Odelia like the sailor, he won't leave me alone. And then everybody has to weigh in and they have these conversations. And I think for me, that's a way of lightening up the tension and sort of making it's almost like sleight of hand, like let's pay attention to this conversation they're having, which is really ridiculous, while I'm going to yank you right back into the scary stuff
Right.
shortly.
Some of the humor has to be
Yeah,
there.
yeah, you can't go full speed, dark, scary. I can't, that's just not how this world unfolds to me. And like
Yeah,
I said,
so
yeah,
what would you say is that your secret to keeping readers hooked without exhausting them? Would you say
yeah,
that's your secret?
yeah, definitely. And it's also my way of showing you who the characters are instead of telling you who they are. I don't
Hmm.
want to tell you that Odelia is somebody who, she's going to dream something and she's very stubborn. You'll see that in these conversations that they're having, or that Jiffy is truly a powerful, he's an empath. He's very powerful is the word that keeps coming to mind, but he's also, this kid who has a huge imagination, and in his mind, like, he thinks he's, diving out of planes, and Bella's son Max takes him at his word for everything he says. He's like, well, yesterday as I was sinking on the Titanic, he says stuff like that. It's a very matter of fact way, and I love that. I want to show you that this kid has a really big imagination. He's also like has past lives that he's mining. He's all over the place. Um, this is who he is, and you get to love him. I think I do. I
Do you
love him.
think do you think that's part of the reason you don't get tired of writing? That you're still very interested in these characters and the
Yeah,
conversations that they're having and
and I
experience?
miss them when I haven't written them in a while, because that book I finished it over a year ago now. So it's time. Like, I miss them. Like, I miss the Dale. Like, it's time to go back. That's how you feel, because yeah, I have a relationship with the characters. Yeah.
Do you think that there's a particular trope that readers never get tired of?
Oh God. There are a few. Well, I wouldn't speak for all readers, but there are a few that I like to use. I love Chance the cat is a cat that, well, she's my real cat. She actually showed up on our doorstep, and this is where the series was born. And back in 2014, this pregnant cat showed up on our doorstep, and was the day I had met with an editor about, we're interested in you writing something interesting for us. And so she just showed up. We saved her. She delivered 6 kittens. She almost died. We had massive vet bill for a stray cat that wasn't ours. So I just sort of thought, maybe I'm supposed to write about her. And I wrote the series sprung from that. I mean, Bella's driving along. She's just lost everything she had except her son, and they're driving, and this cat, pregnant, is in the middle of the road. And that's the device that drives her to Lilydale. It's also the device that drove me in real life back to Lilydale. So in doing research, I found out that, I mean, Lilydale is full of cats. I mean, cats are everywhere.
And dogs, and
There are
dogs.
and dogs as well. And the one before this was called Dog Days. So not to forget our canine friends. But anyway, I think in a cozy mystery, it's such a trope that there's going to be a cat. Cats
True.
and bed and breakfast and inn. There's an old inn. Um, but to me, that chance is the real chance and my fictional chance. And in every book, there's a cat. I use my family's real cats. I use the real life rescues that I have in my life. I don't get sick of them. And the readers love to know, they send me pictures of their cats, and it's such a cliche. It's an inn in the small town in the country with cats. And it works. It works for me.
Works. It works. And don't you feel that that gives people to some degree comfort because that's something that they
You can relate to.
recognize and relate to?
Yes. Yeah, and even the character Drew Bailey, he's the veterinarian, because I needed a new love interest for Bella. That had to unfold slowly. And he's a man who understands animals fully. And he has great intuition, but he doesn't really understand women or people. He's kind of a little bit reclusive, but he's a rescue vet, and he's very sweet and tender. And I love writing that character too. Because that's another trope that, there has to be a little romance, maybe a little bit
Hmm.
of
And that's
something.
also a suspense too.
Yeah,
Will they, won't they?
absolutely. Yeah. And You have to keep finding reasons. That's what romance is, right? A romance novel. I used to edit them. These two people are so obviously perfect for each other. Why are you keeping them apart? It's really hard after a while to say, like, oh, come on, you know, it's just, it can't feel engineered. So that's been fun in these books, though, to sort of get Bella and Drew onto the same page.
Yeah, I think that it is a fun element because suspense, the psychology of suspense is not just about fear. I think that's a huge aspect of
Right.
mystery writing, of course, and having that element, but suspense can come in other formats too.
Yeah. Romance is just one of them too. It's also, Bella's raising this little boy, Max, on her own, her son. And who will he turn out to be? What is he going, and Max plays a big role in the plots. And actually I went to his viewpoint for the last one. He's the other viewpoint character. And I love writing kids. I love writing kids from their own viewpoints. I love writing teenagers. It's just it's I'm a mom and I've always liked kids and I think I understand them. So for me, it's multi-generational cast is important.
Yeah, so it's also the getting into the psychology of each of the characters
Oh yeah. And
and
where you
knowing
are when
where
you're
they
sick.
stand. Mhm.
Yeah, it's not where you are when you're, Odelia, who will never reveal her real age, but I'm guessing she's somewhere in her uh 70s maybe. But yeah, and so you get to explore different phases of life through different characters' eyes and everything you've learned, everything I've learned through my own experience and through like raising children and losing a parent and that kind of thing. It's all life experience and
You're able
you
to weave those and craft those
yeah,
together in the
yes.
in the books, kind of a way of honoring certain aspects of your own life, not just with Chance the cat, but in other capacities.
Yeah, as a mother or as someone who's grieving or as a wife, all of those experiences come into it. And also as a native, I would say Western New Yorker who's very familiar with Lilydale, and I knew what it was. I knew the real Lilydale, I think. It's not what people, not necessarily what everybody thinks when you tell them it's a town populated by spiritualists, and not entirely, but mostly. Um, it just, that brings a certain um, idea to mind. And I like that I knew about Lilydale before, and that's my experience. I knew about it. I know what it is. I am a Western New Yorker. I know the weather. I know the wings. I know, I'm trying to make that authentic,
Hmm.
that part of these books.
That's beautiful. And I know I want to ask a few more questions in terms of the psychology of suspense, because this has been such a big part of not just the Lily Dale genre, but your other books as well. But when it comes to developing these storylines, do you ever have your own fears? We talked about how you have certain characters of your own life that show up in different format in the books, but do your fears ever make their way into your books?
God, all the time, because fear to me, well, fear is about not being able to control something, right? So fear is also about having danger come into the place where you feel safe. And I mind that all the time in my books because they're almost all domestic. I would say domestic suspense or mystery on some level. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're in your house, you feel safe, right? What if all of a sudden that is breached by danger or I mean, that's a real fear that we all have. Like, we just think if we can lock our doors and stay safe in our homes, that's the illusion of being safe. But you always have that fear that maybe you're not. Yeah.
So that's a fear that you're constantly mining in these books. Do
Hmm.
you feel that any of them have helped you to resolve some of your fear?
Um,
Or does it
oh
just
God,
keep going? Do you just keep
not
ruminating through your books?
Yeah,
When do
no,
you get healed?
in real life, and I think with age, at my age, I've learned that sometimes things happen and you just can't, things are inevitable. Loss and tragedy and scary things, that's life. But no, in the books, I tap into that. You said before the word you used was universal, and I just think it is universal. It's not just me. I'm not the only frightened person here. And I think when I was younger and fearing loss and death, not that I'm not now, I think I do. But when I was a kid and I first started visiting Lilydale, I was trying to get information and trying to feel like maybe it's not so scary. Maybe it's not, you know. So so
Yeah,
that
so it's your fears have made the way in the books, but then also the readers are projecting their own anxieties in onto those stories too, the layers of that, right?
yes, anxiety is a good word for it. Yeah, because in real life, we all do our best to like keep anxiety at bay, but I need to tap into that, which is,
So is there a fear that you've never written about because it hits too close to home?
oh, there are many. Yeah, and I don't even like to talk about them. There are many. But I will say that I really started seriously writing suspense when I became a mother, and my firstborn son,
Interesting.
I won't say how old he is. He's about to have a big birthday. Or they're all big birthdays now. But anyway, I just had this moment of, oh my God, the world is terrifying. Like, how can I even leave him in his little, bucket and step into the next room? Something might happen. And I think you realize in that moment, most parents would that they would do anything to keep that child safe, and that their biggest fear is now that they won't be able to. So I tap into that all the time.
Right.
That's
Right.
when I really started writing. Started writing domestic suspense with that. Yeah, because I mean, just as there's nothing you won't do to protect. I always think like, how far would you go to protect somebody that matters so much to you?
That's
Um,
right. That's part of
yeah,
the psychology of it too. How
yeah,
far would a person go to
yeah.
protect?
Well, not just for the protagonist, also for the villain. That
All right.
that
Yes.
right back to like getting into the villain's headspace and what is driving this person. Like, I need to find a way if I'm going to go into this horrible person's psyche, I need to know like why? What do they want so badly? Like, what do they need so badly that they're willing to do what they're doing?
And what have you noticed as the big reason why for them?
Vulnerability when they were younger, a lot of times, I'm just thinking about the ones that I've written, or a misunderstanding in others' perception, money, uh,
Mm.
love. I mean, there are only so many motives for murder. They're not all murder either. These books are not all about murder. I have, you know, various crimes. I've got grifters in one of the Lilydales. That was really fun to write. Um, but but yeah, I mean, there are only so many things that will drive somebody to commit a crime.
Do you ever use things that pop up in the news that
Oh, all the time.
for your
Yeah.
villains?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I listen to a lot of and read a lot of, I mean, my bookshelf, that's my, that's my, I, I have been collecting psychology books my whole career, probably. I've got like, just like, this is the kind of thing, female serial killers, you read, and then I listen to true crime because I want it to be believable. And so many times life is so much more bizarre than anything I could get away with in fiction. I mean, in life, are very messy and they're very dark, and there are coincidences where if you tried to write that in a book, the editor would say, "Make this believable. This isn't believable." Right? So yeah, I steep myself in this kind of thing when I'm plotting usually and early on when I'm creating characters.
So why do you think that people who are anxious in real life love suspense fiction? Why would they do that to themselves?
because it's not real life on the page, and because you can close that book and walk away, just like we said, you have some control. You can control that. And you also, in the end, it's not real. So it allows us, I think, to channel some of that fear and anxiety into
That they may
something.
have had about the world and the news and,
Yeah,
these books
the
you're
real
reading.
stuff to say. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Do you then also have to, on the flip side, have to clear some of that off, because if you're steeping in a lot of those serial killer books and research about those things, what do you do to free yourself from the psychology of that?
I watch The Traitors. I watch Survivor. Like at night, I I drink some wine. I try to keep things really light I see friends. There are times when if I'm writing something really dark, I realize like I've got to just pull myself out of this. Every book demands that to a certain extent, but I've learned it's, you read that or you hear that, cops, people who do jobs like that, emergency room doctor, whatever. They learn to compartmentalize. I'm not comparing myself by any means to people who do those things, but
But
you
it's
still
similar. Yeah.
internalize. You got to put it away and put that here and just go about your life. When you're creating this and you're living in it, you're not just living it, you're causing things to happen, dark things. You need to be able to step away.
Yeah. Are you kind of like Murder, She Wrote, Angela Lansbury and Murder, She Wrote?
Do I look like her? I put on a little eye.
No, no, no,
Like,
no. You're not as old. It's just that
not
she's
that
so
she's
much.
not, but she's a little older than I am.
Of course, not age
But
wise.
yeah,
The
yes,
idea of you're here,
yeah,
she is. She seems so reasonable, like on the show
yeah,
that you used to have
absolutely.
me on TV.
And I
She
seem
seems so
reasonable.
sane and so, yet she has those kind of books on her bookshelf too that you just were
Absolutely.
pointing out.
Yeah. And when my kids were little, I didn't want their playmates' parents necessarily to know what I do. You don't want people to know you're writing about murder and their children are coming to your house, because just it isn't a good look. Um, but yeah, I've been doing this for so long. Look, it's been over 30 years, well, over 30 years now. So I'm very accustomed to this is my day job, which actually encompasses my nights. And a lot of times I wake up in the middle of the night and I try to solve these things too. Like I am Murder, She Wrote, because if I come up with a plot, remember, like, if Bella's going to solve it, then I need to solve this mystery. First, I need to create the mystery and figure out, like, how do we solve this then? Like, what are the clues? It's a lot of busy work when you're supposed to be resting and watching Survivor or whatever you're doing.
So, do you have like a little notebook next to you to capture some of these little snippets?
I text myself these days. I used to have notebooks, but now that we're all electronic, I will text myself notes, or I will, my husband and I will be, eating dinner, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, remind me later to do blah blah blah, which makes no sense to him, but I just thought of this thing for the book. Or I'll ask people, I need to text other people or call people and ask them, like, could this happen? My panel of experts.
So part of building that psychology of suspense and getting the layers of the research right so
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
it's believable enough.
Yes. Especially the police procedural stuff. I have, there's a police officer in Lilydale, and he's very, he's not Bella's favorite person. He's always like, oh, you again, I'm back at Valley View again. But behind all of that, developing that character, which is fun for me, is the actual procedural stuff. So what would happen if he came to this specific crime scene? And that's a lot of research. And those books are behind me too. I have yeah, like I'm just showing you because we're talking about the psychology of it. We're also talking about like getting the research right. I do a lot of it online, but I find that gets really muddy if you're doing it online. So sometimes I can just grab the right book and
Or
look,
or pick up the phone and talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
not mess up my algorithm online either, because some of the stuff you look up is pretty dark.
It'd
So
be like, oh my goodness, we have proof that Wendy's off the
yeah,
rails.
exactly.
I think
So,
that's
but it's
great.
fun. The research is fun, and the research is a lot of like the early part of a book isn't actually writing, or I should say writing because I type everything, not writing longhand anymore. It's not that. It's happening up here. It's happening in my head. It's happening in conversations that I have and in what I'm listening to or reading. Because that's laying the foundation for the book and it's helping me understand what the mystery will be and how we're going to solve it.
Amazing. Yeah. So those are some really important elements of the psychology of suspense that Wendy is sharing with us today. Those of you who are tuning in, let us know if there's certain suspense books or fears or mysteries or anything like that been have been instrumental or that still stick within you. Put those into the comments. I'd like to hear from you and see what is been behind you and your own psychology of suspense when it comes to things. And I'll just say this as well, that uh, when people sometimes they have a mistaken notion of what a medium does. We don't specialize in future telling, fortune telling, that sort of thing. We're trying to connect. We are connecting with loved ones in spirit, family and friends, sometimes pets who have passed. While they could give an opinion, they can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. And so there is this uh, feeling of tension that everyone has about what's going to happen next. And that is what's known as the great mystery. And it's one of the things that I think is so beautiful, that we're not reading from a script. We're not reading from a book necessarily. And it's not about what happens to us, it's how we react to it that dictates the event. So I think that in terms of the psychology of suspense, there's always this tension in an individual's life. Just with that alone, let then extrapolating that into characters in a book or in a movie or TV, and that all they're starting to say, okay, what's the pathway? What are the patternings that I'm seeing that tell me that I'm safe, that the people that I'm starting to care about in this story or this book are safe? And there's a lot of things that flip on their heads, but I think that it ultimately comes back to, how do you want to react in those
Yeah,
kinds of situations, right?
act and react. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That things are in our control, right?
Mhm.
Ultimately in life. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I love the way that you compare that because I haven't really thought about that angle. Now I'm cooking up a new Lilydale plot too. Just based on what you just said. Well, I love that.
Yeah, because that's something that people forget. I think they think that it's just all mapped out, but if it was, I don't know that you and I would sign up for that. So we have free will that is very much part of what we're experiencing. Yes, it would be
So,
boring.
yeah,
Yes.
surprise
So
me,
to some
right?
extent, embrace the suspense, the great
Yeah.
mystery of your own life,
Yeah.
and know that we don't have to live in fear. We can live in love with what the divine spirit is offering us. So no matter what we're presented with, we have that spiritual foundation that we can always go back to. I just thought I'd tell people that so that they would start
Love
to
that.
see how they can extrapolate successfully into their own lives so they don't have to carry fear into it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's perfect.
So I know we should close out soon. Are there any last things you think would be great to share with people about the psychology of suspense and what you do and all the specialized ways that you're working to, pluck the heartstrings, but also help people have an enjoyable read?
Well, I think, after all these years, I've gotten to know so many of my readers. I'm not doing this in a vacuum. Um,
Mm,
I really listen to what my readers anyway. And when I say my readers, I mean there are people who've been reading my books since, I started out writing for young people, and some of them are, all grown up now and still reading. But I try to think about being true to, I owe them something. Like I can't just be lazy and just sort of, oh, I'm just going to write this again because this worked last time. I'm always trying to surprise my readers, and I know they like to stay one step ahead of me, but I'm always trying to like cover new ground and do something fresh, and it is exhausting at my age. It's getting a little bit exhausting, but it's also the joy in it is that I know whatever I'm putting out there. I mean, there are people out there who will appreciate it, and I love to meet them in person, and I love to know that it matters. And a lot of times you can feel like in this world, which can be very dark, like what you do doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, or how can anybody like be proud of what they do when other people are doing so many more difficult and relevant things. Well, I can provide an escape from this. For me, writing it is a little bit of an escape, and knowing that I can provide that to readers. And sometimes I hear from people like, it got me through a tough time, or this is the book I was reading when, or I read this book every year, your book every Christmas I read this book. It's my tradition. I mean, I love knowing that it matters to
Mm.
people. I Because I have that in my own life with authors that, I read, or with people I love. So yeah. So I can rationalize my spooky side with all of that. I am relevant.
Relevant. Well, I just think it's great that you have such a vibrancy of life and living, and you're able to counterbalance that with your understanding of death and fear, and bring something that people really enjoy reading and come back to time after time, and that you're still building us an amazing array of characters and books, and learning so much along the way, right? And how to weave those things productively. So
Yeah.
really lovely. And we're so glad that you're coming to Lilydale. We should tell people, Wendy is coming to Lilydale again this
There.
summer, and she has a special event that will be happening on Saturday, June 27th.
Yep.
There's a whole private VIP event experience that you can be part of starting at 5 o'clock on that day. And then at 7 o'clock, there's this whole conversations with creators. It's focused in on Wendy and her books, and that there'll be a better understanding develop over that time in front of the audience, that conversation that you're going to have about the researching and the writing of your books, and going beyond even the psychology of suspense interview that we've done today. So it'll be great to have you back again. People can find a link to Wendy's event in the show notes so that you can go ahead and get your tickets, make your plans to be visiting Lilydale. As I mentioned earlier, the opening day of Lilydale is June 19th. So you're going to want to make sure you get your tickets, get your room in the hotel or the guest houses, get everything lined up, especially if you want to have a reading with a medium during your visit. Make sure you book early. Many people are booking in, myself included. So
Yeah.
just as a heads up about that. Anything else about your event that we should mention, Wendy?
Just that I love an interactive event, so I will be happy to take reader questions and to sort of have a conversation in that way as well. And I'm sure the books will be available, and I'll sign them and personalize them. And yeah, it always makes me happy to, I spend so much time in a room by myself, that getting out there and meeting readers and seeing all of my friends at Lilydale is something I really look forward to. So I can't wait to chat with all of you.
Yeah.
Let's talk mystery, let's talk Lilydale.
That's right. Oh, that's great. Because I think it's 13 books that you have set in Lilydale
I
now.
think it is. Yeah.
Or is
I
it
have
14 now?
yeah, yeah. I think it is. It's yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of books
That
to
was
have.
never my strong suit, but I think it might be maybe
Well,
13.
we've run out of figures on your hand. Yes, sir. I'll have to count the
I'm a
number.
word person, Will. I don't get any.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I do. And yeah, it's my interest in this, like I said, goes way back to early in my career. And I wrote one book about Lilydale. The first one was In the Blink of an Eye, and I got so much feedback about that one book that I realized there's so much here that people are relating to, and I just love visiting it again. So that's how both series came to be.
Yes. And so just tell people again what the most recent Lily Dale book is so they can find it if they
Oh,
want to.
yeah, the most recent one is called Toil and Trouble.
Okay.
There's a little Beth in there, which was fun. But yeah, it's Toil and Trouble, and that was out last fall. And the first one in the adult series for anyone who wants to start reading now, who hasn't, is called Nine Lives. And Nine Lives is sort of where we meet Bella and all of the characters, and Chance the cat triggers the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then you have a new book coming out as well. That's not Lily Dale related, but it's a different
yeah,
one, right?
coming out next week, April, mid-April it's coming. It's called The Lost Summer, and it's set in upstate New York, not Lilydale this time, but yeah, so that it's a suspense, psychological suspense again.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show today to share with viewers and listeners about the psychology of suspense, and it's such a unique field in so many ways, and it's somehow people you and others just keep churning this out. It's
Love it. I love it. I'm so happy to be a part of all of that. And
uh,
creativity was the only thing that's what I wanted. I wanted to do something creative with my life. So what a gift for me, right? Keep
definitely.
on doing it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And please join us next week for another great episode of Wednesdays with Willa. Bye bye.
I thank you.